The dressing room at the Sands Hotel was thick with cigarette smoke on the night of November 8th, 1963. Dean Martin sat in front of the mirror, loosening his bow tie after another sold-out show. The Rat Pack had been performing for 3 weeks straight, and Dean was tired, not just physically, but the kind of tired that comes from smiling to the same routines, the same jokes, the same adoring crowds night after night. Frank Sinatra walked in without knocking. He never knocked. "We need to talk," Frank said, closing the door behind him. His voice had that edge to it, the one that meant this wasn't about the show or the next gig or which dame was waiting in the casino. This was serious. Dean met Frank's eyes in the mirror. About what? About Bumpy Johnson. Dean's hand froze mid-reach for his drink. "What about him?" "I heard you've been spending time with him," Frank said, sitting down in the chair beside Dean's. "Taking meetings, having conversations." "Dean, I'm asking you as a friend. Stay away from that man." Dean turned to face Frank. "Bumpy's all right. He's smart. Interesting. We've had a few drinks, talked about music, Harlem. What's the problem?" "The problem," Frank said slowly, deliberately, "is that Bumpy Johnson is one of the most dangerous men in America. He just got out of Alcatraz 6 months ago. Drug conspiracy. He ran Harlem for 20 years with an iron fist, and now he's back, and he's looking to rebuild. Dean, men like that don't just want to have drinks and talk about music. They want something." Dean waved his hand dismissively. "Frank, you worry too much. I can handle myself." "Can you?" Frank leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Because Bumpy Johnson doesn't ask for favors. He creates obligations. And once you owe him something, he owns you. I've seen it happen. Hell, I've almost been there myself. You think you're just being friendly, being sociable, and then one day he asks you to do something. Something small. Something that seems harmless. And before you know it, you're in so deep you can't see daylight." Dean stood up, irritation flashing across his face. "I'm not some naive kid, Frank. I've been around. I know how to read people." "This isn't about reading people," Frank said, standing to face him. "This is about understanding power. Bumpy Johnson has survived Dutch Schultz, Lucky Luciano, the Genovese family, and a decade in Alcatraz. He's a survivor, and survivors don't play fair. They do whatever it takes." There was a long silence. Dean picked up his glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down. "I appreciate the concern, Frank. Really, I do, but I've got this under control." Frank stared at him for a moment, then shook his head. "All right, but when this blows up, and it will blow up, don't say I didn't warn you." Frank left. The door clicked shut. Dean sat back down and stared at himself in the mirror, the smile gone from his face. For just a moment, he wondered if Frank was right, but then he pushed the thought away. He was Dean Martin. He'd been navigating the entertainment world, the mob connections, the complicated relationships for decades. How bad could it be? He had no idea. The Godfather of Harlem. To understand why Frank Sinatra was so worried, you had to understand who Bumpy Johnson really was. Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1905, but Harlem made him who he became. He'd gotten his nickname from a noticeable bump on the back of his head, but it was his sharp mind and strategic thinking that made him a legend. By the 1930s, Bumpy had become the right hand of Stephanie St. Clair, the queen of numbers, helping her wage war against Dutch Schultz's encroachment into Harlem's rackets. The war had been brutal. Over 40 murders, multiple kidnappings, violence that made even hardened criminals uncomfortable. But Bumpy had emerged victorious, eventually cutting a deal with Lucky Luciano that allowed him to run Harlem's operations independently as long as the Italian mob got their cut. It was a deal that had held for decades, built on mutual respect and the understanding that Bumpy Johnson was not a man to be crossed. In 1952, federal authorities had finally caught up with him. A drug conspiracy conviction had sent him to Alcatraz for what should have been 15 years. He'd served 11, most of it on the Rock, that cold, isolated fortress in San Francisco Bay where the government sent the criminals they most wanted to break. But Bumpy hadn't broken. He'd read. He'd written poetry. He'd played chess. He'd done his time with quiet dignity, earning respect even from the guards. When he walked out of Alcatraz in March 1963, Harlem had welcomed him home with a parade. Literally, thousands of people lined the streets to see the Godfather return. Because that's what Bumpy was to Harlem. Not just a criminal, but a protector, a Robin Hood figure who used his power to help the community, to keep other predators out, to make sure people had food during hard times and protection when they needed it. But Frank Sinatra knew something that most people didn't understand. Bumpy Johnson's kindness to his community was real, but it didn't extend to people outside that circle, to outsiders, to people he could use. Bumpy was calculating, strategic, and utterly ruthless when necessary. He'd survived in a world where showing weakness meant death, and he'd done it by being smarter, more patient, and more dangerous than everyone else. And now, in late 1963, Bumpy was rebuilding his empire. He needed connections. He needed influence. He needed people in Las Vegas, that desert oasis where money flowed like water and entertainers rubbed shoulders with mobsters every single night. He needed someone like Dean Martin. Bumpy had heard about Dean, of course. Everyone had. The smooth-talking crooner with the easy charm and a laid-back demeanor that made him seem like the most approachable man in show business. Unlike Frank, who was volatile and unpredictable, or Sammy, who carried the weight of every racist slight on his shoulders, Dean seemed unburdened, easy, a man you could talk to without the complications. That's what had attracted Bumpy's attention. Not the fame, not the money, but the access. Dean Martin performed at the Sands, owned a piece of several casinos, and was friendly with every major player in Vegas. If Bumpy could cultivate that relationship, it would open doors that had been closed during his decade in prison. So Bumpy had made it his business to be in Las Vegas in November 1963. He'd made it his business to be where Dean Martin would notice him. And he'd waited, because that's what Bumpy Johnson did best. He waited, he watched, and when the moment was right, he made his move. The meeting. It happened at the Friars Club on a Tuesday afternoon when Dean was supposed to be relaxing between shows. The club was a sanctuary for entertainers, a place where the biggest names in show business could drink, play cards, and swap stories without cameras or fans or the weight of their public personas. Dean was at a corner table, nursing a scotch and reading the racing forms, when a man approached. Not rushed, not hesitant, just confident, purposeful. "Mr. Martin, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Ellsworth Johnson. Most people call me Bumpy." Dean looked up. The man before him was in his late 50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. His face was weathered but intelligent, his eyes sharp and assessing. There was something about him, a presence, a weight, that made Dean pay attention. "Have a seat," Dean said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Bumpy sat down with the grace of a man who'd sat at a lot of tables with a lot of dangerous people and knew exactly how to carry himself. "I wanted to introduce myself properly. I'm a great admirer of your work. That's Amore. My wife and I, we played that record until we wore out." Dean smiled. He'd heard 1,000 compliments about his music, but there was something genuine in the way Bumpy said it. "I appreciate that. You in town for business or pleasure?" "A bit of both," Bumpy said. "I've been away for a while, getting reacquainted with how things work, making new connections, renewing old friendships." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "I spent some time as a guest of the federal government. Alcatraz. Just got out earlier this year." Most people would have been uncomfortable admitting they'd done time in Alcatraz. But Bumpy said it the way someone else might say they'd been on vacation. Dean found himself intrigued despite himself. "Alcatraz," Dean repeated. "That's serious time." "It was," Bumpy agreed. "But it gave me time to think, to read, to understand things I'd missed while I was busy running around Harlem." "You ever read Marcus Aurelius, Mr. Martin?" "Can't say I have." Stoic philosopher, Roman emperor, he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Prison was an impediment, but it made me better, more patient, more deliberate. Bumpy leaned back in his chair. "I came out with a clearer vision of what I want to build." They talked for an hour, not about crime or business or anything heavy, Just music, books, Harlem, Vegas, life. Bumpy quoted Shakespeare and Langston Hughes with equal ease. He asked intelligent questions about Dean's career, about the challenges of performing live versus recording, about how Dean managed to make everything look so effortless. It was one of the most interesting conversations Dean had had in months. No schmoozing, no hidden agendas that he could detect, just two intelligent men talking about life. When Bumpy finally stood to leave, he shook Dean's hand. "I've taken up enough of your time, but I hope we can do this again. It's rare to find someone worth talking to in this town." "Absolutely," Dean said. "Next time you're in Vegas, look me up." Bumpy smiled. "I'll do that." 2 weeks later, Bumpy called. Could Dean meet him for dinner? Quiet place, good food, just conversation. Dean agreed. At dinner, Bumpy brought up a problem he was having. Nothing dramatic, just complicated. He had some friends in Harlem, good people, working people, who wanted to invest in legitimate businesses out west. Real estate, maybe a restaurant or two. But they were black businessmen from Harlem in 1963, and doors that should have been open were mysteriously closed. "The thing is," Bumpy said over dessert, "I know you've got connections all over Vegas. You know the right people, the people who make decisions. And I thought maybe you could make some introductions. Not asking you to vouch for anyone. Just open a door or two. Let these men make their case." It seemed harmless. Dean knew people. Making an introduction wasn't the same as endorsing anything. And Bumpy had been clear. These were legitimate businessmen, not criminals. "Sure," Dean said. "I can make some calls." "I appreciate that," Bumpy said. Truly, that was the moment. That was when Dean Martin, despite Frank Sinatra's warning, despite his own instincts telling him to be careful, said yes to Bumpy Johnson. That was the moment everything changed, when a favor becomes a trap. The introductions Dean made were simple enough. He called a few casino owners, a couple of real estate developers, and mentioned that some business associates of his from New York were looking to invest in Vegas. Could they take a meeting? The meetings happened. Deals were discussed. Some moved forward, some didn't. It all seemed above board. Then, 3 weeks later, Bumpy called again. Different tone this time. More serious. "Dean, I need to ask you a favor. A real favor this time." They met at a private suite at the Riviera. Just the two of them. Bumpy poured them both drinks and got straight to the point. "The businessmen I introduced through you, they're not just businessmen. They're my people, my organization. And right now we've got a situation." Dean's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where some money needs to move from point A to point B without attracting attention." Bumpy said calmly, "Nothing illegal, just discreet. The money's clean, but the people it's going to aren't ready for scrutiny. You understand?" "No," Dean said, his voice hardening. "I don't understand. You told me these were legitimate businessmen." "They are," Bumpy said, "but legitimate businessmen in Harlem still have to navigate a complicated world. This is just business, Dean. All I need is for you to receive a package, hold it for a day, and pass it along to someone else. That's it. You never even need to look inside. You want me to be a courier. I want you to be a friend." Dean stood up. "I can't do this, Bumpy. I made some introductions because you asked, but I'm not getting involved in moving money or packages or whatever the hell this really is." Bumpy's face didn't change. His voice remained calm, almost gentle. "Dean, sit down, please." There was something in that please that made Dean sit. "You need to understand something," Bumpy said. "Those introductions you made, the people you vouched for, they're already in business now. They've got deals pending, money changing hands, connections established. And all of it happened because you opened those doors, because you put your name behind it. I didn't vouch for anyone." "You did," Bumpy interrupted. "Maybe not explicitly, but when Dean Martin calls a casino owner and says, 'These are business associates of mine,' what do you think that sounds like? You gave them credibility. Your credibility. And now, if anything goes wrong with those deals, if anything seems suspicious, whose name comes up first?" Dean felt his blood run cold. You set me up. I created a relationship, Bumpy corrected. And now we have mutual interests. Because if those deals fall apart in a way that attracts federal attention, the FBI is going to want to know who made the introductions. They're going to ask why Dean Martin was putting Harlem associates in touch with Vegas money men. And they're going to start looking very carefully at your finances, your dealings, your connections. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Bumpy hadn't threatened him, hadn't coerced him, had just maneuvered him into a position where saying no had consequences Dean couldn't afford. All I'm asking, Bumpy continued, is that you help me with this one thing, this one time. After that, we're square. You fulfilled your obligation to our friendship, and we can go back to just being acquaintances who respect each other. Dean looked at Bumpy Johnson and finally understood what Frank had been trying to tell him. This man wasn't cruel or violent or even particularly threatening. He was just infinitely patient, infinitely strategic, and always 3 moves ahead. And Dean had walked right into his trap because he thought he was smarter, more experienced, more careful than to be played. What's in the package? Dean asked quietly. Does it matter? It matters to me. Bumpy considered him for a long moment. Money, $100,000. Clean money. But it needs to get to someone who can't be seen receiving it directly. You hold it for 24 hours. Someone picks it up from your dressing room at the Sands. And that's it. Transaction complete. And if I say no, then I respect your decision, Bumpy said. And we both deal with whatever consequences follow from the connections you've already helped establish. Dean Martin had been in tough spots before. He'd dealt with mobsters, with studio executives, with angry husbands and jealous rivals. But he never felt quite as trapped as he did in this moment. Sitting across from a man who'd outmaneuvered him without ever raising his voice or making a threat. When Dean asked, tomorrow night, someone will deliver it to your dressing room before the show. Someone will pick it up the next evening. You don't need to do anything except keep it safe. Dean nodded slowly. He didn't agree out loud, but they both knew what his silence meant. Bumpy stood, put a hand on Dean's shoulder, friendly, brotherly, the gesture of one friend to another. You're a good man, Dean. This will be over before you know it, and we can both move forward. After Bumpy left, Dean sat alone in the suite for an hour, staring at nothing, wondering how the hell he was going to explain this to Frank. The confession. He didn't have to explain it. Frank found out on his own. 2 nights later, Frank burst into Dean's dressing room 20 minutes before showtime. His face was tight with anger. But there was something else there too. Concern, maybe even fear. What the hell are you doing? Frank demanded. Tell me you didn't take a package from Bumpy Johnson. Tell me you're not that stupid. Dean looked up from tying his bow tie. How did I know? Dean, this is Las Vegas. Everything gets back to everyone. I've got people who keep an eye on things, who let me know when someone I care about is making a mistake that could get them killed. So I'm asking you directly. Did you take a package from Bumpy Johnson? Dean didn't answer right away. Then quietly, yeah, I did. Jesus Christ. Frank ran his hand through his hair, pacing the small room like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any concept of the fire you're playing with? He backed me into a corner. Of course he did. Frank shouted. That's what he does. That's what I warned you about. Bumpy Johnson doesn't pull a gun or throw punches. He creates situations where you have no good options, where every choice leads back to him, and you walked right into it because you thought you were too smart to be played. I know I screwed up. Screwed up? Frank laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dean, you didn't screw up. You put yourself in debt to one of the most dangerous men in America. And whatever he had you move, whatever was in that package, you're now part of it. You're complicit. If that money is connected to anything illegal, if it leads back to drug trafficking or extortion or murder, you're an accessory. Dean's face went pale. The package was picked up yesterday. It's over. It's not over, Frank said, his voice dropping to something cold and certain. It's never over with men like Bumpy. You think this was a one-time thing? He's testing you, seeing if you'll comply. And now that you have, now that he knows you'll move money for him when pushed. What do you think comes next? The room was silent, except for the muffled sounds of casino beyond the walls. I need to fix this, Dean said finally. You can't fix this, Frank said. You can only contain it. And even that's going to cost you. What do I have to do? Frank sat down, his anger draining away, replaced by the weariness of someone who'd seen too many good people make bad decisions. You have to go to Bumpy. You have to tell him that you're out, that you fulfilled your obligation, and now you're done. And you have to be prepared for him to push back, to pressure you, to remind you of everything you've done that could come back to haunt you. And if he doesn't accept that, then you make him understand that you're willing to go to the feds yourself. Frank said that you'll confess to moving the money, explain that you were coerced, and name names. It'll destroy your career, probably land you in prison for a while. But it'll also destroy whatever Bumpy's building in Vegas. Mutually assured destruction. The only language men like him understand. Dean stared at his friend. You'd really want to do that? Throw away everything. I want you to be willing to do that, Frank clarified. I want Bumpy to believe you're willing to do that, because if he thinks you'll protect yourself at any cost, he'll back off. But if he thinks you're afraid, if he thinks he owns you, he'll never let go. The price. The meeting with Bumpy Johnson happened 3 days later at a private room in a restaurant Dean had never heard of, in a part of Vegas most tourists never saw. Bumpy was already there when Dean arrived, sitting at a table with a cup of coffee and the kind of calm that came from never being surprised. Dean, Bumpy said warmly, I was expecting to hear from you so soon. Everything goes smoothly with the package. It went fine, Dean said, sitting down across from him. But we need to talk about what happens next. What happens next is we move forward. Bumpy said, you helped me out. I appreciate it. And when you need something, you come to me. That's how these relationships work. That's not how this relationship is going to work, Dean said, his voice steady despite the fear running through him. I helped you once because you maneuvered me into a position where I didn't have a choice. But that's done now. We're square. And I'm not doing it again. Bumpy's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. You think we're square? Dean, you move $100,000 for me. That money is now connected to transactions across 3 states. If anyone ever looks into it, your fingerprints are all over it, metaphorically speaking. Then I guess they'll find my fingerprints, Dean said, because I'm prepared to go to the FBI right now and tell them everything. About the introductions I made, about the package I moved, about how you manipulated me into it. I'll take whatever consequences come from that. But what I won't do is spend the rest of my career being your courier. Bumpy leaned back, studying Dean with the kind of attention a chess player gives to an unexpected move. You'd really destroy your career, everything you've built, your reputation, your income, your freedom. You'd throw all that away just to get out from under an occasional favor? Yes, Dean said simply, because the alternative is worse. The alternative is spending the next decade wondering when you can call again, what you're going to ask for next, how much deeper I'm going to get before I can't get out at all. So yeah, I'd rather burn it all down now than wait for you to do it slowly. There was a long silence. Bumpy sipped his coffee, his eyes never leaving Dean's face. Frank put you up to this, Bumpy said finally. This sounds like Frank Sinatra logic. Scorched earth, mutually assured destruction. Frank gave me advice, Dean admitted, but this is my decision. I made a mistake trusting you, and I'm fixing it the only way I know how. Bumpy set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. You know what I respect, Dean? Conviction. A man who's willing to sacrifice everything for what he believes is right. That's rare. Most people will compromise, will rationalize, will find reasons to keep doing what's comfortable even when they know it's wrong. But you're sitting here, ready to destroy yourself to maintain your principles. I can respect that. So we're done. We're done, Bumpy agreed, with one condition. Dean's jaw tightened. What condition? You don't go to the FBI unless I give you a reason to. If I contact you again, if I ask for anything, then you do what you have to do. But if I leave you alone, you leave as buried. The introductions happened. The package moved. and we both move on with our lives. You get your piece, I get mine. It wasn't perfect. It left Dean with a secret that could come back to haunt him, but it was better than the alternatives. Deal, Dean said. They shook hands. Bumpy's grip was firm, businesslike, the handshake of two men who understood each other perfectly. For what it's worth, Bumpy said as Dean stood to leave, I wasn't lying about your music. That's Amore really is a hell of a song. Dean nodded and walked out. But the price of his freedom wasn't just the fear of that secret hanging over him. There was another cost, one that hit him when he got back to the Sands and found Frank waiting in his dressing room. How'd it go? Frank asked. We're done, Dean said. He agreed to leave me alone. Good. Frank stood up, preparing to leave. Then he stopped at the door and turned back. Dean, I love you like a brother, but you need to understand something. When I warned you about Bumpy Johnson, I wasn't being paranoid or controlling. I was trying to protect you, and you ignored me because you thought you knew better. Frank. I'm not finished, Frank said, his voice hard. This time it worked out. You got lucky, or I helped you get lucky, or whatever. But there's going to be a next time. Some other operator. Some other situation where someone wants to use you. And when that happens, I need to know that you'll listen, that you'll trust my judgment. Because if you don't, if you keep thinking you can handle everything on your own, one of these days your luck is going to run out. And I might not be able to save you. The words hung in the air between them. I hear you, Dean said quietly. And Frank, thank you for not giving up on me. Frank's expression softened slightly. That's what brothers do, even when you're being an idiot. After Frank left, Dean sat alone in his dressing room for a long time. The price he'd paid wasn't just the risk of federal investigation or the fear of his secret getting out. It was the knowledge that he damaged something precious. Frank's trust. They'd repair it in time. Their friendship was strong enough to survive this. But there would always be a scar there, a reminder of the night Dean Martin ignored Frank Sinatra's warning and almost paid a price neither of them could afford. The lesson: Bumpy Johnson kept his word. He never contacted Dean Martin again, never asked for another favor, never mentioned their arrangement. For years later, in July 1968, Bumpy died of a heart attack in a Harlem restaurant, clutching his chest over a plate of chicken and grits. Dean learned about it from the newspaper. He didn't go to the funeral. He didn't send flowers. He simply read about the passing of the Godfather of Harlem and felt a complicated mixture of relief and respect. Relief that the secret he carried would die with Bumpy. Respect for a man who, despite everything, had honored their final agreement. In the years that followed, Dean told the story only once, to Sammy Davis Jr., over drinks late one night in 1972. Sammy had been dealing with his own troubles, his own compromises and complications, and Dean wanted him to understand something important. The thing about power, Dean said, swirling a scotch, is that it's not always obvious. Bumpy Johnson never threatened me, never raised his voice, never even implied violence. But he had more power over me than any mobster with a gun ever could, because he understood something fundamental. He understood that the worst traps are the ones you walk into yourself. How do you mean? Sammy asked. He made me complicit, Dean explained. He created a situation where I'd already done something compromising before I realized what was happening. And once I was in, getting out meant admitting what I'd done. That's the real power, not force, but complicity. Making you part of the problem, so you can't solve it without destroying yourself. Sammy nodded slowly. Like being black in America. They make you complicit in your own oppression just by existing in the system. You can't get out without tearing everything down. It's not the same, Dean said carefully. What I went through was my own stupid fault. What you go through is unjust. But yeah, there's a similarity in the mechanism. The trap that's hardest to escape is the one that makes you question whether you deserve to escape. Years later, when Frank Sinatra eulogized Dean Martin in 1995, he told stories about their friendship, their performances, their legendary bond. He didn't mention Bumpy Johnson. That wasn't a story for public consumption. But in private, in conversations with people he trusted, Frank would sometimes bring it up as a cautionary tale. Dean was one of the smartest guys I ever knew, Frank would say, quick with a joke, sharp with money, could read a room better than anyone, but everybody has a blind spot, and Dean's blind spot was thinking he could charm his way out of anything. Sometimes charm isn't enough. Sometimes you need to listen to people who love you, even when their warnings seem paranoid. The story of Dean Martin and Bumpy Johnson never made it into the history books. It didn't become part of the Rat Pack legend, didn't get dramatized in movies or TV shows. It remained what it had always been, a private lesson, learned at great cost about the difference between confidence and arrogance, between being smart and being wise. Dean Martin had thought he could handle Bumpy Johnson. He'd been wrong. But he'd been lucky enough to have Frank Sinatra in his corner, and strong enough to pay the price for his mistake before it destroyed him. Not everyone who ignores a warning gets that chance. The real legacy of that moment, that meeting in November 1963, when Frank warned Dean about Bumpy Johnson, and Dean ignored him, wasn't just about the favor that went wrong or the price Dean paid. It was about something deeper. The understanding that friendship means listening, that wisdom means accepting help, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is admit you were wrong and let the people who love you help you make it right. Frank Sinatra had warned Dean Martin about Bumpy Johnson. Dean had ignored it and paid a huge price, but he'd also learned something invaluable, something that would serve him for the rest of his life. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach you how to listen.